night, and it was surprising to say the least, because you and I have always broke down pre-debates, post-debates. We've talked about the election for at least a year now, and this might be the first time we can actually talk about policy. So talk about what some of your takeaways are from last night.
Well, first of all, it was very refreshing for the American public to have we'll call it a legitimate, policy-focused, serious debate that wasn't full of back and forth. It was more about, here are my ideas versus your ideas and vice versa. And people had to have a chance to actually for themselves evaluate what feels right. Now, debates generally, Brittany, are about expectations, right? Going in. Who was expected to do well? Everyone seemed to be saying Tim Walz was going to do not only well, he was going to wipe the floor with J.D. Vance. And as it turned out, I think J.D. Vance was the star of the night. He came from, a relatively, let's say, he came from kind of a beginning that was stumbly, let's say, out of the convention, et cetera. And what happened was he found his sea legs in a hurry right before a national audience, and it felt great. And what debates like between vice presidential contenders really is, first and foremost, Brittany, it's an audition as to whether one or both could be the number one commander in chief in the country, or do they have those kinds of presidential chops? I think it's fair to say, regardless of who you were looking at last night, and regardless of your debate marks, that both candidates acquitted themselves well, and you could see either one actually being able to sit in the Oval Office. But for J.D. Vance, what was amazing about his performance was not only how articulate and compelling he was, but how he seemed to be very full of common sense and compassion and understanding. This is not something I think that Team Trump has been able to project in droves for a while. I think that really helped the ticket. It brought a sense of stability and calm and purpose to the table. And finally, Team Trump was able to deliver its message. Its message essentially being, going back to James Carville days about the economy stupid and other things parallel, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And I thought how J.D. Vance went through that, and he did that without being full of accusations and allegations and hyperbole. He did that very, very directly, soberly, and reinforced by evidence, we'll say. And that, I think, changed a lot of opinions about J.D. Vance, could have changed minds as well about the presidential campaign.
I was having conversations yesterday, and one GOP strategist said, I think we're going to see a dumpster fire on that stage. They're going to be coming in hot. And the J.D. Vance we were introduced to from the RNC on, he seemed kind of like a pit bull, attacking the media, attacking others, attacking Democrats. Walz was the one who made weird as an insult really famous, and really the Democrats thing that they're running with. But we saw a lot of civility last night, a lot of commonality, both people saying, hey, I agree with you. It seemed like they were almost friends. So do you think J.D. Vance came out as the winner last night?
Well, Frank Lunt's focus group post-debate and other focus groups had it as a runaway winner, J.D. Vance, again, at least because of expectations. But think of the surprises last night. One that really stands out for me, Brittany, was the focus on tolerance and versus the intolerance that I think is taken over the country these days. And it didn't come from Tim Walz. If I had to make a bet, I would have thought Tim Walz would have advanced that somehow into the debate himself. It came from J.D. Vance. And I got to say, it felt great. It felt great to feel for the first time in a long time on a national level that leaders were willing to embrace commonality, common ground, reach across the aisle, do what's right, but do it with serious intent as opposed to political calculation. And because it came from J.D. Vance, who had relatively low favorables going into the debate versus Tim Walz, that was a 10 strike for him in terms of his perceptions. And you can see that, by the way, already in the post-debate polls. People I think that I saw one poll, he's 10 to 12 points up in favorability overnight. That doesn't happen very often on the national stage.
Yeah, this did favors to both of their likability because JD Vance came in with a likability problem. And the conversations I've had from the debate on this morning, I've talked to Republicans and Democrats, and the one takeaway everyone's really having is this was refreshing. We like to see our politicians agree to disagree, to find common ground, to disagree, but disagree with politeness. So I am curious though, because as I've said, JD Vance did come in with a likability problem. He did annoy a lot of women when he said the cat ladies comment, when he said other comments. But then when it came to abortion, which is a topic that Democrats really have taken away as people trust them more with handling, he said the GOP, quote, has to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back when it comes to that. Do you think he moved the needle at all when it comes to this topic?
Totally. It's in debates, what usually stands out, Brittany, is what a candidate does when the tough questions come. It's not the softballs, it's because those usually default to rhetoric and talking points. It's what happens when the curveballs come in, right? And of course, this was expected, not just reproductive choice and climate change, but January 6th. These were tough, this is tough terrain generally, or has been in the last couple of months for Republicans. He handled it incredibly well and sensitively. And by the way, I believe J.D. Vance is completely right. Republicans need to do better in communicating their position on a number of issue fronts, including reproductive rights. They just have not done well there. And I think his openness to wanting to embrace that with humility, as opposed to certainty, which is what we see far too often from political leaders, was, again, one of those aha moments, and it was refreshing. People felt good about it.